Hello and welcome to my course Building a Microservices App with .NET and Next.js from scratch. My name is Neil Cummings. I'll be your instructor and mentor through this journey to build such an application. And let's take a look at what we are building on this course first of all. So we're going to be building a demonstration proof of concept auction application for cars. And users will be able to advertise their cars on our auction site, and other users will be able to place bids on those cars. And this client-side application is built using Next.js and Tailwind CSS to provide the styling. We've got various filters, and we can take a look at completed auctions, live auctions, auctions ending soon. We can order them, and we can adjust the page size here as well. And we can also search for specific makes, models, or colors of the cars as well. Now, if a user does want to place a bid on a car, they will need to log in, and to provide the login functionality, we're actually going to be using Identity Server to provide a secure method that the users can log in. So we're actually redirected to Identity Server at this point, and I'll just enter the password for Bob so that I can log in, and we're taken back to the app, and now Bob has the ability to do things. He can look at the auctions he's won, the auctions he's selling, he can sell another car, and we can also go and place bids on auctions. And if we look at this auction for this Audi TT, Bob can decide to place another bid because the reserve has not been met, and Bob adds his new bid and finds again the reserve has not been met. But we're also hooking this up to Signal R, so anybody else connected to this auction would see these bids coming in live, and then they can make competitive bids as well. And we can see things like the time remaining in this auction. So this is what we're aiming to build in this training course. And all the functionality for this auction site is made up of several microservices that all do different jobs and provide different elements to what we see here. And what we are using to build this is, in the main part for all our backend services, we're going to be using .NET to do that, and the client-side application is going to be built using Next.js, which is an excellent framework that is React based, but it's high performance and it gives us a lot of cool functionality, especially with the newest features that they have added to that. We'll be running our services over Docker. In development, we'll be effectively publishing our application locally using Docker, but for real publishing, and this is kind of optional because there's no free option, we'll be using Kubernetes to do so. The service-to-service communication is going to be provided by RabbitMQ, and for authentication and identity purposes, we're going to be using Duende Identity Server to do so. So just to run through the goal of this course, it's to learn how to build from scratch a microservices-based application using .NET and Next.js, and to be able to run this locally without any cloud-based services in a production environment. And also to optionally deploy this to a cloud provider. I've said that's optional because there's really no free way of deploying a microservices-based app to the internet. It is a paid-for thing, but the main goal of this course is to get this all running locally that doesn't cost us anything. And optionally, we can go a step further if we wish to do so. That's all covered inside this course. And why would you want to take this course, for instance? Well, I do believe in making practical learning experiences, and to do that, we build a project in this training course. We're always working towards something, and we add the elements as we go along to turn this into a finished product, if you like. And we don't start with any pre-built code. We start from scratch, and the goal of this is to really learn by doing it. That's not to say there's no theory elements littered around this course. There is, as and when we need to provide some additional context and understanding to what we're building at any given time. So what do you need to participate in this course? Well, you do need an operating system, of course, that runs Windows, Mac, or Linux, and a code editor or IDE of some description. All of the demos in this training course, I'll be using Visual Studio Code to demonstrate, but that doesn't mean you have to do so. And you also need a computer that's capable of running Docker on your machine, and I would encourage you to check out the prerequisites video I've made available in the previews just to make sure that you have what you need to participate in this training course. And I'd also encourage you to check out the preview videos that I've made available for this training course, and check out the reviews, of course, from this and any of my other courses. So without any further ado, let's begin. Okay, in this lesson, I just want to run through the prerequisites for you to be able to participate in this course. And regarding your experience, please note this is not a beginner course. I am expecting you to have some coding experience, and please do not use this course as your very first coding adventure. It will, I promise you, be far too challenging as your first coding experience. Now we are using .NET and we're going to be using Next.js, which is React based, and I wouldn't think you need much experience in either of those. So long as you've got experience in other languages, I would think that the code that we write on this course, you will be able to pick it up even if you've not used C# before. As long as you've got experience in other languages, I'm pretty sure you'd be able to relate to what we're doing inside this course and understand it. Also, for this type of course, we do need to think about the operating system and hardware requirements. There is a minimum that you need to reach, and we'll just review that by taking a look at the Docker requirements. We'll be using Docker significantly inside this course to run the containers that are used for our different services that we build on this training course. Please come to this website, docker.com, get started, learn how to install Docker, and please pick your operating system and see what the minimum requirements are for yourselves. So if I take Windows, for example, then it does tell us what the system requirements are, including the hardware requirements inside here as well. On Windows, there's even BIOS level hardware virtualization that has to be enabled in the BIOS settings. So this is something you would need to review to see if you can indeed participate in this course, because Docker is going to be a first-class citizen in this training course, and we do rely on it significantly to run our different services. So please note the hardware requirements. See this as an absolute minimum, and 4 gigs, I don't know. I think if you're running all the services we create on this course with 4 gigs of RAM, I think your computer is going to be screaming at you if you've only just meet the minimum requirements. Also, please note the operating system requirements as well. If you're on Windows, then you do have to have at least Windows 10 64-bit or Windows 11 to run Docker on your computer. If you're still using an older version of Windows, then apologies, but again, this is something that would prevent you from installing Docker and participating in this training course. So please do come to this page and make sure you meet the minimum requirements for Docker, because that's the thing that's probably going to be the thing that causes you problems if you don't have enough hardware to run what we're doing on this course. You can also test the ability to run the app by coming to the course GitHub repository, github.com, try-catch-learn-casties. Inside here, there are some instructions on how to run the app locally on your computer. 9 steps and you'll get to see the app running locally on your machine. But please bear in mind, this part here, step 4, building the services locally running on your computer, may take several minutes to complete, and if you've got just the minimum requirements, your computer might not be happy about you doing this, as this is quite intensive work to build all of these different services. So I'll leave that up to you. If you want to test to see if you can run the app locally, then this is an option as well for you to take a look at. So now we've covered the prerequisites. In the next lesson, we'll take a look at the course assets, and we'll take a closer look at this GitHub repository and the source code available for you to refer to. Okay, in this lesson, I'm just going to run through setting up the developer environment, and really just to let you know what you need to download and install for what we're going to be using in this training course to build the application. So first of all, we need a code editor or IDE. It's not a beginner course list, so I suspect you already have a preference of what you typically use to write code. Now, because this is a .NET course, we do need something that's compatible with .NET and can compile and run C# code. The one that I will be using to demonstrate everything is Visual Studio Code. You do not have to use this, but I have to use something to demonstrate, and I picked Visual Studio Code because it's free to use, it's very lightweight, it's pretty fast, and it's pretty good. But it's not perfect, and there is a lesson coming up that will show you how to deal with the common issues you might face with Visual Studio Code. But if you don't like VS Code, you don't have to use it. You can of course use Visual Studio if you prefer to use that. I find it a bit heavyweight, and I don't use this to demonstrate because it's a very Windows specific thing, and as you can probably see that I use a Mac anyway. And the Visual Studio version for Mac is very different to what you guys on Windows have. The one for Mac is a vastly inferior product compared to the version that Windows has for Visual Studio. So I stick with Visual Studio Code for development. What I typically use in my daily life though is Rider. This is excellent. It is cross-platform, but it's not free to use, so I do not use this for demonstrations on this course. But it is an excellent tool for C# development, but please just bear in mind it's not free and you do need a subscription to actually make use of that. Something else that we need to install, and we have on our computers, is Docker, and you will need to go ahead and install this on your computer to participate in this course. And please do take a look at their installation guides inside the docs and getting started and how to install Docker. You'll find there's a guide for each different operating system. And inside the install Docker desktop, please do take a look at this, especially on Windows, because there's different options depending on whether or not you're on Windows Home Edition or Windows Pro. You do have to have Windows 11 or Windows 10 64-bit, and please bear in mind the minimum requirements to get this stuff running. It does say 4 GB of system RAM, but please see that as the bare minimum that you can use to run this, as your operating system is going to consume a chunk of that RAM. So is Docker, and the services that we build and run, you might find your computer screaming at you if you do have the bare minimum that's required to just get this thing installed. Hopefully you've taken a look and given it a test go on the completed app and see how it runs on your machine before you've got to this stage. So I would have mentioned this previously. Take a look at these installation guides and follow them as well, because there are features that you need to install into Windows and possibly enable on your BIOS as well before you can go ahead and install Docker. And you'll have to have Docker installed to participate in this course. Docker is a first-class citizen in this training course and this application that we're building, and it will be a requirement. There's no workaround to that I've included on this course, so please make sure you have Docker up and running in your system as well. We'll also need Node.js because the client-side app that we're going to be creating does run on top of Node, and I've used version 16 because that's what I already had installed on my computer, but please go ahead and download a version of Node for your machine. The long-term support option is normally the good one to use for this, as the latest and greatest versions of Node sometimes you'll run into issues, but the long-term support option typically works just fine. Because we're developing a .NET application, you will need to get the .NET SDK, and the current version, and the version I've used on this course, is .NET 7, and please go ahead and install this for your computer. If .NET 8 is out of preview, then you might want to use that instead. I've taken a look at the upcoming features that are introduced in .NET 8. I do not envisage any issues because nothing they're adding to .NET 8 is conflicting with what we're using in .NET 7. So please grab the appropriate version for your operating system. Also on this course, we're going to use a tool called Postman, and we're going to be using this extensively to test our APIs as we build them. I do have a pre-built Postman collection that will save us a lot of time as we go about building and testing our application. So even if you do have a preference for another API testing tool, please do download and install Postman onto your machine, as you will find it helpful as we build this application. We will be saving our code into source control at the end of every section. I presume you already have this on your computer, but if you do not, then we're going to be using Git to do that, and also we're going to be using GitHub to save our changes into a public source repository. We're going to be using GitHub because that provides us with some continuous integration features that we can add later on in this training course. So please do get yourself a GitHub account and sign up for this if you do not already have one, of course. So those are the things that we need to install into our computers. And in the next lesson, we'll take a look at something else you'll need to download, which is the course assets I provided for this training course.